This is James Altucher at TheStreet.com TV, and I'm here with Jim Cramer. And Jim, when I first started a hedge fund, I had a problem. I had no pedigree. I didn't come from Goldman Sachs. I didn't work at SAC Capital or Jana Partners or D. Shaw. So it was very hard to kind of get that start, particularly from a marketing point of view. You could have good ideas, you could even have a good track record, but if you don't have that marketing in, it's very difficult. Now, it took some time and I built up, but how would you do it today?
Well, first, you're an anomaly because you're performance-oriented. I say that because performance-oriented isn't as significant as the skills that you're describing, which is why I've always told people that the single greatest way to get in a hedge fund is to go into sales at a major firm. Go into sales with high net worth. Those people are basically running hedge funds for wealthy individuals, and then you just take a percentage. That's what I did. Now you'd say, well, wait a second, Jim, selling isn't rigorous enough versus research. That's nonsense. You can, without a doubt, develop your own ideas as a salesperson. Now, if you are totally reliant on the research of your firm and you go out on your own, I think you'll fail. Because once you're out, relying on the research is different from being internally. You're just a client. So it may not be as good. Doesn't mean it's bad, but you've got to have some sense that you can develop ideas yourself. Because you don't want to be a hedge fund based on Goldman Sachs research. But when you have the selling skills that are imparted by being a broker, what happens is you have a continual source of money. So even if you fail to deliver premium results initially, you know how to sell. And you can sell a not great record versus having a great record with no sales experience is very tough.
Well, it brings to mind an interesting question just about business in general. A lot of people, I think, shy away from the word salesman, and there's a lot of almost negative connotation there. But that seems to be the critical component of any business you put together.
I have found that everybody at a certain level recognizes that selling is their job. It's amazing. I'm friends with a very good investment banker, one of the top producers at Goldman Sachs. And if you ask him what he does for a living, he'd say he sells Goldman Sachs's expertise. Now, this is a guy who's very honest. I mean, normally he'd say, I put together big deals. But there are at all levels at major firms, people who sell. A lot of CEOs sell for their companies. And it's the ones that are most successful who recognize that is a very important part of their business. The ones who are least successful are the ones who have contempt for selling, because then their product has to be so far superior to everyone else's that they can get out, they can mitigate their lack of sales skills. And the reality is that it's a lot better to be lucky and be a salesperson. It's a lot better to have a mediocre product and be a salesperson than it is to have a superior product and not know how to sell.
Well, it brings to mind a couple of questions then. First, what are let's say the 2 or 3 best techniques for selling, like in your experience?
Well, okay, selling is a numbers game. So if you want to get assets, what I used to do is I used to make 30 calls a day, which then would produce probably 4 or 5 meetings, which then would produce 1 prospect. So you start at 30, you take it to 1, you do 30 a day, you get 5 prospects a week. You get 5 prospects a week, you probably close on 2 or 3 of them. So you're talking about having a stream of maybe 10 clients a month, which is really not bad.
It's interesting. I wonder if that's like almost a cosmic ratio, the 30 to 4 to 1. Because I'll give you an example. I was once hired to help somebody sell a company. And so I went to another banker for advice, and he basically said the same thing. Approach 30 similar companies. You're going to get 4 visits/offers, and 1 will close.
Well, look, mine was, there's no mystery to it, because I ended up teaching selling at Goldman. That was exactly how many good calls we thought people could make. Good, solid, that there are not 100 calls to be made because there's not 100 good targets. There's not 20 calls to make because then it doesn't produce the ratio. So, it was the optimum, and we had to submit at Goldman a sheet of the 30 people we called every day. So, it is far from guesswork.
But that's got to be hard. Like, what do? Call a doctor and say, hi, I'm
what I used
Jim
to
Cramer
do
at Goldman Sachs?
Was very frustrating. What I used to do is go to libraries, this is pre-internet, and look up the local paper and look for the people who would get a lot of awards or were running fund drives. Because I realized if you're running the YMCA fund drive in a town, you're doing that because you're one of the richest people in town, because those are people who have a staff. Unfortunately, I've been saddled with I try to do one drive a year in my town where I'm the figurehead guy. And I'm the figurehead guy because people say, oh, he gives. And a lot of times when you're the figurehead guy, they make you that because they know that you'll give a big gift. So I would go to town after town after town, Madison, Chatham, Summit, to Morristown. In New York, I would go to Corning. I would go to Rochester. I would go to Syracuse. And these would just be tremendously hard things to do. And I would constantly be trying to find those 30 people. When I didn't find them, I didn't do well.
Now, when you call them, would they hang up? Would they talk to you?
Well,
what would be the first thing you would say?
I would tell you that I had one particular leg up. For a year of my life, I covered homicide. And when you cover homicide, all calls are hard. Okay? And you're trying to get the picture of a loved one. So these calls were not nearly as difficult as the incredibly horrible calls I had to make. One of my legs up.
Those are personally difficult, but the listener wants to listen to you.
No, because what happens is those other calls, they hang up on you on homicide, and you'd have to call them back, and it was really horrible because you had tremendous conscience problems.
Yeah.
But you knew that, and I had a speech to give when I did those obituaries. So I wrote a speech for what to do. I never made a call without my speech. And if people hung up on me, then I went on to the next one. That's part of the 30.
Now, do you think that helped you with your Mad Money experience, 20 years later?
Well, it's very easy for me to talk to people because I had to develop that skill. And that, plus being a vendor at the stadium, at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, these create a fluidity of discussion when normally you would not be able to create a give and take.
All right, well, this is James Aldertrue talking with Jim Cramer about sales techniques. Thanks.